Discover the touching note a millionaire CEO uncovered. It revealed an amazing transformation. Jake Lawson stepped into the dusty community center in Riverton, Nebraska, a place that smelled of faded memories and was draped in peeling wallpaper. As the millionaire CEO from Chicago, he was used to boardrooms filled with sharp suits and polished floors. But here, amidst the remnants of a past life, he felt a tug at his heart. This was no corporate world. This was home once vibrant, filled with laughter and warmth, now a ghost of what it used to be. When Jake's renovation team began checking the building, a loose section of wallpaper caught his eye. As he peeled it back, a yellowed note fell to the floor. Curious, he picked it up and began to read the elegant penmanship of Helen Thompson. The words glistened with hope and folly. Helen wrote about her family, about dreams of farming and the land that had fed them until economic troubles crept in like a thief in the night. They lost everything, yet her voice never wavered. She spoke of resilience, of teaching her children the value of hard work, even amidst despair. Jake's chest tightened. He recognized that nagging feeling of ambition he had chased for so long. The million-dollar deals and high-flying parties felt trivial compared to Helen's fierce dedication to her family. As he continued to read, the vibrant summer days of his own childhood filled his mind. Cornfields, barbecues, neighbors helping neighbors. He had strayed so far from the simplicity of those moments, blinded by ambition. As he dove deeper into the renovation project, he found himself entwined in a community riddled with skepticism. They eyed him warily, an outsider, a distant CEO bearing the weight of wealth that seemed to create barriers, not bridges. Despite his genuine desire to help the Thompsons reclaim their dignity, he was met with cold shoulders and murmurs echoing the hurt that wealth had inflicted upon them. "Who does he think he is?" one woman murmured as he passed. "Like money can fix our problems." Jake organized a community fundraiser, a showcase of talents hidden away in the shadows. But the evening didn't unfold as he hoped. Amid laughter, he noticed tensions rising, old wounds resurfacing. And then, just when he thought it was all unraveling, a frail, elderly woman approached him. "I need to speak with you," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Her story, woven with love and sacrifice, unfolded like petals from a flower, revealing a landscape of pain and unyielding hope. It was at that moment he realized that true wealth wasn't in dollars but in the connections made through understanding and compassion. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jake prepared to confront his own estranged father, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on him. The echoes of Helen's unwavering spirit lingered in every corner of his mind. There he stood at the crossroads of his past and future, heart racing and hands shaking. Could he mend the ties he once thought were irreparable? And would this journey bring healing not just for him but for the community that had become part of his story? With a deep breath, he raised his hand to knock. The door remained unanswered, panic clawing at him as his heart thundered. Would he step through and finally meet the father he long abandoned? Jake stood before the door, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The faded wood felt rough under his fingertips, a reminder of the years lost to silence and regret. Should he knock again? He could feel the weight of the community on his shoulders, their skepticism still echoing in his ears. What if he failed them? What if this step led to another heartbreak rather than a reunion? With a trembling breath, he finally knocked. The sound reverberated through him, each knock a plea for reconciliation. Minutes felt like hours as he waited, uncertainty gnawing at his resolve. Just as he was about to turn away, the door creaked open. A weathered face peered out, familiar yet foreign, filled with lines of age and burdens unspoken. "Jake?" The voice trembled, mixed with disbelief and a hint of hope. "Dad," Jake's voice cracked. He struggled to hold back the surge of emotions. Anger, nostalgia, fear, it all collided within him. "Come in," his father said, stepping aside. The room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of old wood and dust. The space might have been a living room once, but it felt more like a shrine of what had been lost. An old couch sagged under the weight of time, and pictures of a younger Jake, full of promise and innocence, lined the walls. "It's been a long time," Jake finally spoke, the weight of remorse heavy in the air. "Too long," his father replied, voice low and rough. He gestured to the couch, and Jake sat, feeling the distance stretch between them even as they were physically close for the first time in years. Silence hung heavily, like the oppressive humidity before a storm. Jake's heart raced as he fought back the flood of memories, the fights, the silence, the words left unsaid. "I can't change the past, but I've come back to try," he hesitated, searching for the right words. "To reconnect. I want to make things right." His father's gaze fell, as if burdened by the weight of their shared history. "You think money will solve this?" Jake felt that old anger flare before he quelled it. "I don't trust me. I know that it's not the answer. I just want to fix what's broken." "Do you truly believe it can be fixed?" His father responded sharply, but Jake could see the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "I thought I could fix everything with money, but I've learned it doesn't matter. I've been chasing the wrong things," Jake admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I just want to know you. I want to know my family." His father sighed, the weariness emerging from his soul. "Family isn't always about blood, you know. It's about being there through the good and the bad, and I failed with you." Jake felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. "I failed too. I left. Why did it take you so long to come home?" His father asked quietly, almost as if he were asking about more than just distance. Before Jake could reply, the door swung open abruptly behind them. A group of neighbors stood at the threshold, eyes wide with surprise. "What's going on here?" one woman called out, disbelief coloring her tone. Jake turned, feeling the mix of hope and fear swell within him. Everyone he had tried to help was here, and suddenly this was no longer just a confrontation with his father. It was a chance to show them all he was here to stay, ready to bridge the gaps. Caught between two worlds, Jake felt the heaviness lift slightly, yet uncertainty remained in the room. He looked between his father and the neighbors, both groups waiting. Could this moment become the turning point he desperately needed, not just for himself but for the whole community? As he opened his mouth to speak, he wondered how the story would unfold. Would they accept him, or would he be forever trapped by his past? The air crackled with tension, and he took a deep breath, ready to answer. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on him. It was a familiar sensation, but now transformed into something heavier, more profound. This was his chance to rewrite his story, to redefine what family and community meant to him, to them all. "Listen," he started, his voice firm despite the tremor underneath. "I know I've made mistakes. Leaving wasn't just about leaving home. It was avoiding facing the truth, avoiding facing all of you. I was selfish, too wrapped up in my own life to even think about how it affected the people I love." The crowd shifted restlessly, murmurs and glances were exchanged. A woman in the front, her expression a mix of support and disbelief, broke the silence. "But you're back now, Jake. Why should we trust you?" Jake's heart sank. Her question was fair. In fact, it was the question that haunted him since the day he left. "I don't expect trust to come easy," he admitted. "I want to earn it. I owe it to all of you. This community has been my home, and I turned my back on it. I want to show you I can be different." His father's eyes searched his face, and in that moment, Jake saw traces of hope mingled with skepticism. The veins in his father's hands were visible as he gripped the armrest, and Jake felt the need for reconciliation pulsating in the air. "I understand if you're angry," Jake continued, shifting each word to build a bridge instead of a wall. "You have every right to be. But let us not just look at what I did wrong. Let us talk about how we can move forward. Together." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, his father spoke up, voice cracking like the old wallpaper peeling from the walls. "And what about your brother?" The mention hit Jake like a cold wave. He had almost forgotten. How could he? Growing up, they were inseparable. I didn't know he needed me. I thought I was taking the smart route, but I see now how it hurt him. I want to fix that, too. I want to be there for him again. He'll let me." The murmurs in the crowd intensified, a mixture of sympathy and confusion. The woman's gaze softened. "It's not just about you anymore, Jake. There are others, people you've left behind. How do you plan to rebuild that trust?" "Let me start, at least," he replied, desperation creeping in. "I'm here to work, to contribute, to be part of this community again. I'll volunteer, organize events, whatever it takes. I want to help." His father nodded slightly, and Jake felt a small flicker of hope ignite within him again. Perhaps, just perhaps, the door was creaking open enough to let in a glimpse of light and understanding. But then someone in the back shouted, "Words mean nothing if you don't act on them. What will you do when things get tough again?" Jake swallowed hard. "You're right. I can't promise perfection. Just commitment." As bemusement danced among the townsfolk, a feeling of dread unfurled inside him. Would it truly be enough? In the dim light, the atmosphere shifted, the weight of expectation hung in the air thickly, and Jake felt like an island surrounded by uncertainty. He could see reflections of varying emotions in their eyes. What if they couldn't see the change he was determined to embody? His father placed a hand on his shoulder, a grounding presence. "Talk to your brother first. Show him you care. That's where it begins." "Yeah." Jake nodded slowly, gratitude swelling in his chest. "I'll do that." But in the back of his mind, doubt trickled like a slow leak. Would his brother even want to see him? As the neighbors began to disperse, murmurs swirling around him, Jake felt the reality of his situation settle in. The battle for reconciliation was only just beginning. With a deep breath, he turned back to find his father watching him, a hidden plea in those tired eyes. "Let us take this one step at a time. Food's getting cold. Let us eat." Jake nodded, but inside, uncertainty echoed louder than any voice. Could he truly mend what had been broken, not only with his father but with the rest of the family? And then, as if reading his thoughts, his father asked, "What's going to happen if your brother doesn't he want anything to do with you?" The question hung heavily between them. Would they ever find a way back to one another? With every heartbeat, Jake felt the urgency grow. Jake stepped into the familiarity of his childhood home, but it felt different now. The air was thick, suffused with unspoken tension. Shadows cast by the evening sun loomed large, reflecting his internal turmoil. He felt the ghosts of past moments swirl around him, the laughter, the arguments, the dreams he once shared with his brother. "Jake?" His father's call pulled him from his thoughts. "You want to help in the kitchen?" He nodded, but the knot in his stomach tightened. The kitchen held memories too. Moments shared over steaming pots of spaghetti, comforting each other during tough times. Today, though, it felt like walking a tightrope. Both men began chopping vegetables in silence, the rhythmic thwack of knives against cutting boards filling the void. His father worked with focused precision, his eyes lost in concentration. Jake wanted to bridge the gap between them, but words felt trapped behind a barricade of emotions. "Dad?" Jake broke the stillness, his voice trembling slightly. "What was he like? When I was gone, did he ask about me?" His father paused, a shadow crossing his face. "He did. More than I think you know." The words were heavy, layered with hurt. He felt abandoned. It hurt him, Jake. The truth hit Jake like a physical blow. "I didn't want to hurt him," he murmured, slicing a piece of bell pepper too thin. The juice ran over his fingers, shards of color splattering across the cutting board. "I thought I was protecting myself. Sometimes protection comes at a cost." His father's voice wavered. "You left a void, not just for him but for all of us. It's not easy to come back and fill that." With that, a wave of regret washed over Jake. He wanted to scream, to let out all the guilt that weighed down his heart, but he held it inside. "I want to try, Dad. I want to make things right." His father sighed, setting down his knife. "Words are one thing, son. Actions are quite another. If you want to mend your relationship with your brother, you need to show him you mean it. Jake's chest tightened at the thought of facing his brother. What if he didn't want to see him? What if he did? But the scars of that absence were too deep. We'll have dinner, his father continued. Invite him. Let him know he's welcome here. He needs to know you care. I will, Jake replied, his voice more determined. As the meal started to take shape, the aroma filled the air, an inviting contrast to his turmoil. When the table was set, Jake felt a flicker of something almost foreign hope. Maybe this was a step towards healing. Later, as they ate, laughter echoed around the table. Neighbors drifted in and out, sharing stories of their days. Jake watched his father smile, but he couldn't shake the anxiety gripping him. What if tonight was just an illusion of normalcy? Then the opportunity presented itself. Jake caught a glimpse of an invitation handwritten on a note, almost forgotten. It had been tucked under his father's plate, a reminder of some upcoming event in the community. Is this family night at the community center? He asked, an idea sparking. His dad looked over, eyebrow raised. Yes, they always have games, food, everything. A good way to get to know everyone again. Should I invite Brian? Jake's heart raced at the thought. What if this could be my first step? Silence fell, but it was a different kind than before. There was an understanding flickering between them. His father nodded slowly, a glimmer of approval in his eyes. That could be a good start. What if he refuses? Jake felt the weight of uncertainty again, but he couldn't turn back. His father leaned in closer, his voice steady. You have to take that chance. It's about showing you care, Jake. No matter what happens next, the gesture matters. Jake took a deep breath, resolved. I'll call him. As he picked up the phone later that night, the world blurred around him. His fingers trembled over the screen, and his heart pounded in his chest. Would this catalyst ignite a path to healing, or would it sever any hope he had left? The phone rang, and with every heartbeat, Jake felt the walls closing in. What would he say? Would it be enough? And then, the voice he feared and longed to hear broke through. Hello? It was his brother. Jake's breath caught in his throat, a rush of emotions threatening to spill over. Would he dare to ask for forgiveness? Or would this be another chance missed? Brian, Jake said, his voice faltering at first. It's Jake. Silence stretched on the other end, thick and uncomfortable. He could imagine his brother's reaction: surprise, anger, confusion. Jake's heart raced as he waited, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension. Finally, he heard a low, almost cautious response. What do you want? The simple question felt like a sledgehammer, shattering the fragile hope Jake had clung to. I wanted to reach out. I'm back in town. I know it's been a while, and why now? You weren't around when things got tough. Brian cut him off, bitterness slicing through the air. What makes you think I want to hear from you? Jake squeezed his eyes shut. Each word felt like a nail, driving deeper into the regret festering in his heart. I made a mistake leaving. I thought it was for the best, but I see now it only hurt us. Your apology doesn't fix everything, Jake. Brian's voice was steady but edged with emotion. You left. No warning, no explanation. Tears pricked at the corners of Jake's eyes, frustration battling vulnerability. I know. I can't take it back. But I want to try and make things right. I'm hosting a family night at the community center this weekend. I'd like you to come. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but silence. It felt like the universe had paused, waiting for Brian's decision. And why should I? His brother's tone was challenging, but Jake could hear the thread of curiosity woven into the question. Because I care, Brian. I want to rebuild what we lost, even if we can't change the past. Maybe we can start with small things. Just come hang out, games, food, laughter. The silence deepened again, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Jake held his breath, unsure if he'd ever hear Brian's voice again. Finally, Brian sighed. I'll think about it. And then the line went cold. Jake dropped the phone onto the couch, his heart pounding, a mix of fear and a spark of relief lighting the darkness. He had made the first move, but as the seconds passed, uncertainty crept back in. What did "I'll think about it" really mean, Jake? His father's voice came from the kitchen, breaking the tense bubble. How did it go? He forced a smile, but it felt more like a grimace. He said he'll think about it. His dad stepped into the living room, worry etching his features. That's something. You opened the door. Jake nodded slowly, but a lingering doubt rose in his chest. What if he doesn't come? What if it only pushes him further away? Then you'll try again, his father replied, determination evident in his voice. And no matter what, don't give up on him. Jake nodded, but the storm of questions raged within. Could he bear the possibility of failure? What if Brian refused to forgive him? Time moved slowly as the clock ticked on the wall, each second echoing Jake's unease. Dinner turned into an afterthought, lost in the depths of his mind. He was restless, replaying the moment over and over. He needed to make it better, to heal the rift. That night, as he lay in bed, he initiated a plan. He saw flickers of who they might have been together, sharing memories long overshadowed by pain. Maybe if he showed Brian that he was still the brother he remembered, still capable of laughter and fun, they could move forward. The next morning, Jake awoke with a renewed sense of urgency. He would create a family night his brother couldn't resist. Pizza, games, maybe even an old movie they used to watch together. Little by little, the excitement began to take root. Yet what would happen when Brian arrived? Would the air crackle with the past? Or could they forge a new start? Jake stood by the window, the sun breaking through the clouds, a sense of possibility washing over him. He was ready to fight for his brother, ready for whatever came next. But as he glanced at his phone, waiting for that call, he wondered if tonight would be the first step towards mending the rift or another chance lost. Jake's heart raced, hope blossoming amidst the fear. Would Brian accept the invitation, or would another opportunity slip through his fingers? The day of the family night arrived, and Jake's nerves danced like a live wire. He took deep breaths, reminding himself of all the plans he had made. The community center buzzed with energy, the vibrant colors of balloons and streamers bringing life to the room. Jake had put up a banner that read "Family Fun Night," in bold letters, his attempt to capture the spirit of joy he longed to share with Brian. Hours passed, and with each tick of the clock, anticipation gnawed at him. He had set up tables for board games and stacked boxes of pizza near the entrance, hoping the smell would draw people in. But one thought consumed him. Would Brian come? The nagging doubt loomed larger than ever. As the crowd began to arrive, laughter and chatter filled the room. Jake greeted old friends and familiar faces from the neighborhood but felt detached, his heart still tethered to the uncertainty of his brother's absence. Each unfamiliar laugh felt like a reminder of the void Brian had left in his life. Then, just as Jake was starting to feel overwhelmed, the door creaked open, and a familiar silhouette appeared. It was Brian. His gray hooded sweatshirt hung loosely, and his hands were shoved deep into his pockets, an uncertain expression on his face. Instant relief washed over Jake, but it was tinged with fear. What if Brian's presence did not mean he was willing to connect? "Hey, you made it," Jake called out, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Brian nodded, moving further into the room. The light above them flickered, almost as if the universe itself recognized the tension hanging in the air between them. They stood just a few feet apart, and the emotions swirled: hope and hesitation, nostalgia and resentment. "Dad said there is pizza," Brian said, his tone flat, but Jake could sense a flicker of curiosity beneath the surface. "Yeah, I ordered your favorite pepperoni. Extra cheese?" Jake replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into his voice, but it came off shaky. Brian's lips quirked ever so slightly, as if the memories of their shared love for pizza were fighting to break through the wall that had been built between them. "Thanks." They awkwardly shifted their weight, both feeling the air thick with unspoken words, a universe of memories begging to be addressed. Jake gestured toward the games. "I thought we could play some. Maybe that old racing game you always beat me at?" "Only if you're ready to lose again," Brian replied, a hint of challenge creeping into his voice. It was a small step, but for Jake it felt monumental. They joined a group of others gathered around the tabletop game, and as they played, laughter began to bubble up again. For a moment, Jake allowed himself to feel light, blissfully distracted by the friendly competition. He glanced at Brian. The tension in his jaw seemed to ease just a bit with every laugh. As the night rolled on, Jake formulated a plan in his mind. He knew there was more to say, gritty truths and heartfelt revelations waiting to be uncovered. He just needed to find the right moment, the opening where they could finally dip into the waters of their shared past. As the final game wrapped up, and the lights dimmed slightly for an impromptu movie screening, Jake and Brian exchanged glances that spoke volumes. In the shared warmth of memories and the flickering light of the screen, the connection they had lost began to glimmer faintly. But as the credits began to roll, Jake realized this was just the beginning. Could they move past the walls that still stood between them? Or was this fleeting moment just a cruel tease of what might never be fully restored? With his heart racing, Jake looked at Brian, ready to speak, ready to delve deeper. But then Brian's phone buzzed, and the light of the screen illuminated his face, revealing hesitation flickering in his eyes. The moment could break between them just as easily as it had started. Would Jake find the words to pull Brian back from the edge? Brian glanced at the screen, his expression shifting from curiosity to something sharper, anguish or guilt. Perhaps. Jake felt a lump in his throat, a weight pressing down hard on his chest. Was this it? The communication barrier would rise again, taking that fragile connection back into darkness. Hey, I'm just gonna take this, Brian said, stepping away from the crowd. Every part of Jake wanted to reach out, to stop him from drifting away again. But he was frozen in place, watching as Brian headed toward a quieter corner of the room. The laughter and commotion faded into a dull background hum, highlighting the escalating turmoil inside Jake. He knew he had to follow, to coax Brian back into the light, but seconds ticked by like hours. Taking a deep breath, Jake pushed through the small crowd, navigating his way to the sidelines where Brian leaned against the wall, focused intently on his phone. Felt surreal watching his big brother become a stranger again. Brian, Jake said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. Is everything okay? Brian looked up, startled, and the mask of indifference he wore slipped for just a heartbeat. There was an ocean of emotion in his eyes, fear, frustration, and maybe even regret. He pocketed his phone, but it felt like they were still worlds apart. It's fine, Brian replied, but the weakness in his voice betrayed him. Jake took another step closer, feeling the magnetic pull of family tugging at him. Do you want to talk about it? Jake offered. Really, I'm here. For a moment, silence fell between them. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, and he felt heat rising in his face, unsure whether he wanted to run or break the dam that separated them. This was his chance, his opening. I don't know, Jake, Brian finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. It's just a lot has happened. Jake felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. We don't have to talk about everything at once. Just start somewhere. Brian's shoulders slumped, his defenses slipping further. Stupid, really. Just old stuff. I thought I was over it. Jake took a step closer, sensing the shift in Brian's energy as he guarded his feelings. You know what? It's not stupid. It's real. And I want to hear it. I want to be there for you. Brian met Jake's gaze, searching for sincerity. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he finally nodded. Okay, just give me a minute. As Brian stared into the distance, Jake braced himself for a vulnerable moment, one that could lead them toward healing or send them spiraling back into silence. The air around them felt charged, crackling with the unspoken words of their shared past, waiting to burst free. Suddenly, the sound of laughter erupted nearby, momentarily breaking their focus. Jake found it oddly comforting. Family night still thrived around them, alive with stories and memories that echoed their own. But inside, his heartbeat drummed louder, a reminder of what hung in the balance. Before Jake could speak again, Brian let out a deep sigh. You know what I miss most? Jake leaned in, even if just slightly, eager to catch every word. What? The simplicity of it all. Playing games, eating pizza, you and me against the world. Brian's eyes glimmered with a mix of nostalgia and longing. Now it all just feels complicated. Jake's heart ached at the truth wrapped in those words. We can find our way back to that. I know we can. But would they? Jake held his breath as he leaned closer, the question heavy in the air between them. What would take that next leap, a leap toward the bond that once felt so unbreakable? Just then, Brian's phone buzzed again, slicing through the moment. His face fell, another reminder of the life he was trying to escape. Would this be the distraction that pulled him back? Would Jake have the courage to keep pushing forward, regardless of the obstacles? Jake began, but his voice caught as he saw his brother look down at the screen, the light reflecting uncertainty back at him. What choice would Brian make in that pivotal second? Would he lean into the past they both longed for, or retreat into the safe shadows of his distraction? Brian hesitated. His thumb hovered over the screen, and Jake could see the tension flicker across his brother's face, torn between the comfort of escape and the raw honesty of his emotions. Please don't go, Jake urged, feeling that lump in his throat return, heavier than before. We were just starting to talk. With a deep inhale, Brian pulled his gaze from the screen and reluctantly slipped the device back into his pocket. I'm here, he said, though it felt like a fragile promise. The laughter from the party swelled again, a reminder of the world outside their bubble. But inside, silence reigned. What was so important? Jake asked, trying to bridge the overwhelming gap. Was it work? Something you have to deal with? Yes, no, it's complicated. Brian rubbed the back of his neck as if the weight of expectations had settled there. I keep getting pulled in different directions. It's exhausting. Jake nodded, each word striking a familiar chord. I can imagine. But you don't have to deal with it alone. I want to help, even if it just means listening. Brian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Jake knew all too well. It was his a signal that he was wrestling with something deeper, pushing against walls built over years. The thing is, Jake, Brian began slowly, I thought being successful would make me happier. That it would sort everything out. But it hasn't. It's like the more I achieve, the more I feel distant. Jake leaned closer, desperate for the moment to unfold. You don't have to keep it all together. It's okay not to be okay. Brian's expression softened just a little, the rawness beneath the surface beginning to unravel. Sometimes I just miss us, the way things used to be. A flicker of hope sparked in Jake's chest. We can get back to that. We can do that together. You know how we always made each other laugh? Yeah, Brian chuckled softly. You were the master of bad jokes. Jake grinned at this, encouraged. And you were always there to roll your eyes but secretly find it funny. For a moment, the corners of Brian's mouth lifted, a glimpse of the brother Jake used to know. Yet just as quickly, the smile faded, shadows returning to his eyes. But what if I don't know how to find that light again? Brian's voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in. What if I've changed too much? Jake felt a surge of urgency. You haven't changed that much. The core of who you are is still there. Just like the core of who I am. Do you really think so? Brian searched Jake's face for confirmation. I know so. Jake couldn't help but raise his voice a little, feeling the weight of the moment. You may be dealing with a lot of stuff now, but underneath, you're still Brian. You're still my brother. And I'll always be by your side. As the words hung in the air, Brian's expression shifted. It was like glimpsing a sunrise after a long night, an acknowledgement that there was hope. Then the phone buzzed again, breaking the magic. Brian's face drained, the corners of his mouth sliding back into a frown. Jake's heart sank, fearing the spell had been broken. Just 1 second, Brian murmured, lifting the phone to check. Jake watched uneasily, wondering if that moment of connection would get swept away once more. Brian, wait, Jake started, but it was too late. Brian's laughter turned into a harsh exhale, a troubling mix of humor and pain that echoed in the chilling silence. Jake braced for whatever news was on that screen. Would it draw Brian away or bring clarity? And as the atmosphere between them thickened with worry, Jake clenched his fists, determined not to let this moment slip away. Brian, whatever it is, we can handle it together, Jake said. But as Brian stared at the message, Anticipation threaded with dread began to envelop them both. Would this phone call fracture the fragile bond they were building? Or could it become the catalyst for the transformation they both so desperately needed? Brian's eyes darted back and forth as he scrolled through the message on his phone. Jake could feel the tension in the air. It weighed heavy, like a storm cloud ready to burst. He tried to read Brian's expression, searching for any hint of what had his brother so rattled. "Brian?" Jake's voice broke through the silence, softer this time, full of concern. "What's going on?" It's from work," Brian finally replied, his voice shaky. "They want me at a meeting, like now. They're pulling me back in, and I thought I could just take a break. You know? I thought I could talk to you." Jake let out a slow breath, each word from Brian cutting deep. He could see it the way his brother's shoulders tensed, the flicker of panic overtaking the little spark of hope they just shared. "You're not just a work machine, Brian. You have a life outside of this," he insisted, feeling desperate to break through that fog of obligation. "This is important. We're talking about you." Brian glanced back at his phone, a mixture of guilt and frustration on his face. "I know, but every time I try to step away, something pulls me right back in. Like I'm a puppet on strings." Jake shook his head. "You have to cut those strings. You're not just someone else's puppet, you're your own person. We need to figure this out together." Brian hesitated, looking away to gather himself. Finally, he lowered the phone and met Jake's gaze. "You're right. It's just I don't want to let anyone down. I have responsibilities. People depend on me." "Sure they do, but at what cost?" Jake pressed. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Brian. You can't take care of them if you're not taking care of yourself." The tension between them shifted, ricocheting with unspoken words. Brian nodded slowly, processing what Jake said. "It's just hard to see that line sometimes," he admitted. "I keep thinking that if I just work a little harder, things might finally click back into place." Jake stepped closer, his voice unwavering. "You don't need to work harder, you need to feel. This is what matters." He pointed between them, grounding what they had shared in that moment. "You can still be there for them while being there for yourself." Brian's eyes softened again, vulnerability creeping back in. "But what if I fail?" Jake took a breath, eyes steady. "What if you don't? What if this is the start of you finding that light again?" Brian swallowed hard. "I want that, I really do." But as he said those words, a sudden loud laugh from the party outside interrupted them, a reminder of how distant reality felt. Brian's gaze flickered towards the sound, awareness sliding back in like a heavy blanket. Maybe I should just go join everyone," Brian suggested, the urge to retreat returning. "No," Jake said, the urgency in his voice rising like a wave crashing down. "Staying here is what you need. I'm not letting you walk away from this." Brian stayed still, staring at Jake with indecision dancing across his face. His phone buzzed once more, but the attention it demanded seemed to grow fainter against the backdrop of the moment. Jake's voice softened, pleading. "You can do this. You don't have to choose between work and family. You can weave them together." Brian hesitated, a small crease forming on his forehead. "But how?" As the question hung in the air, the party's energy shifted again, laughter pealing like bells calling its participants back to revelry. Jake could see the flicker of doubt in Brian's eyes, but he also saw something else pushing through a glimmer of determination. Before either of them could speak again, the phone buzzed fiercely, rattling in Brian's pocket like a warning bell. "Wait," Brian began, but Jake cut in, urgency tightening his voice. "What if this is the moment you stop being pulled back in? What if this is the moment you take control?" Caught in the whirlwind of what could be, they both stared at each other, hearts racing, waiting for his next move. With every ounce of Jake's hope resting on the answer, Brian's thumb trembled over the screen, caught between the pull of obligation and the push of his own heart. What would he choose? Would his decision mark a new beginning, or would it keep him shackled to the past? The vibrant laughter of the community night echoed around them, but in the corner where Jake and Brian stood, a storm raged. Each pulse of the phone felt like a ticking clock, counting down the seconds before commitment slipped away. Jake could see it, the struggle in Brian's eyes, the weight of expectations pinning him down. The atmosphere buzzed with possibility, but uncertainty reigned supreme. "Brian, think about it," Jake urged, stepping closer, the gravity of his words pressing in. "This could be your chance to choose. Not just for you but for us. For the family we used to be." Brian's thumb hovered over his phone. Uncertainty etched deep into his brow. The laughter from the party spilled light into this quiet moment, a reminder of joy just out of reach. "But I can't let them down." His voice was strained, caught between obligation and desire. Jake's heart pounded. "But are you letting yourself down? You sacrificing your happiness isn't what they want either. They need a whole you, not just the part that meets deadlines and hits quotas." Slowly, the tension began to shift, like the first rays of dawn peeking through a heavy fog. Brian looked around, taking in the vibrant colors and the warmth radiating from familiar faces enjoying the night. A flicker of recognition shone in his eyes, the brother he used to be, the laughter they had once shared. "You're right," Brian finally breathed, pulling the phone from his pocket. The moment stretched out. "I've spent so long trying to be someone else, someone they approve of. I forgot who I wanted to be." Jake nodded, encouragement spilling from his heart. "Then let us find that person together. You don't have to do this alone." With trembling fingers, Brian finally pressed the lock button on his phone, silencing the demands that had been pulling him away for too long. The act felt liberating, as if he was shedding a layer of expectation. In that moment, the binds that had held him down started to loosen, revealing a glimmer of potential. "Tonight is for us," Brian said, a hint of determination rising. "I need to reconnect with what matters most, my family. Starting with you." A wave of relief washed over Jake. "Exactly. This is just the beginning." In that instant, Brian turned to join the festivities. Laughter enveloped them once more as they stepped into the light of the party. The comfort of shared sadness and joy began to weave a new bond, one sturdy enough to hold their growing hope in the face of adversity. As they approached the tables filled with familiar faces, Jake felt the warmth bloom in his chest. "Hey, what about some pizza?" he asked, grinning. Brian chuckled. "Sure, but I want to be the one to beat you at that racing game." Jake laughed, their playful banter echoing through the crowd. The familiar sibling camaraderie began to rekindle amidst shared smiles. Others joined in, slowly bridging the gap that had widened over years of silence. Hours drifted by, filled with laughter and joy. Jake exchanged glances with Brian, feeling a shift not just in him but in the entire room. The community was healing, coming together as they passed plates of food and shared stories of the past, present, and future. And then, as the night drew to a close, Jake realized that each moment marked a step toward reconstruction, not just for him and Brian but for everyone present. They had all carried burdens, yet together in that space, they were beginning to lighten them. The party winded down and the soft glow of the lights cast a serene atmosphere over the community center. They gathered to say their goodbyes, hugs exchanging warmth that hadn't been felt in too long. "Can we do this again?" Brian asked quietly, hesitance tinging his words. The question hung in the air. Jake smiled widely. "Absolutely. Let us make it a family tradition. Every month something new." A sense of determination flickered in Brian's gaze, lifting the last remnants of doubt. They finally began stepping forward, a path formed of renewed commitment and love. As they walked toward the doors, Jake felt lighter, as if walls were crumbling away, brick by brick. In their hearts, a poignant realization settled in. Healing is never easy, but together, it didn't have to be lonely. Every step forward built a bridge back to each other, and the entire community side by side. As they exited the community center into the cool night air, Jake looked up at the stars twinkling overhead, a reminder of endless possibilities. He squeezed Brian's shoulder, knowing this was just the beginning of something beautiful. "Let us teach each other how to be brothers again," Jake whispered, sincerity radiating from him. "Yeah," Brian nodded, finally breaking into a smile. "I'd like that." Their laughter echoed into the night, a promise of connection reborn, a family carrying hope forward. Now, This incredible story of transformation deserves your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories that uplift and inspire. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below your feelings about this amazing ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Let's spread the hope and healing.